Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, we are talking about the challenges and opportunities of managing documents in the context of your Dynamics platform. This episode is sponsored by Formpipe, makers of AutoForm DM. And as you will hear, the future of document management is very much the story of business modernization and digital transformation more broadly. My guests, Mike Rogers, Ben Saxton, and Dean Palmer of Formpipe, discuss how they solve customers' challenges today and how that compares to the conventions of the on-premises world of just a few years ago. Documents are an ever-changing concern as organizations react to regulations and manage risk as they adapt to the cloud, but they also enjoy new opportunities to automate processes and generally expand access to data as well. Okay, I am here with Mike, Ben, and Dean from Formpipe. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Jason. Good to be here.
Thanks, Jason.
Great. So maybe just to start for our listeners, we could just do some quick introductions. Yeah, Mike, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Mike Rogers. I am the commercial director here for the private sector at Formpipe. I've been around selling these solutions for about 20 years now, so I have a little bit of experience in sort of the output and document management we're going to be talking about today. But I have a team globally who are looking at sales and marketing for Formpipe in the private sector.
Great. And hi, Ben. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Ben. I head up the account management function here at Formpipe, which we call customer success. I come from a background of working with document management systems within various different industries, including heavily regulated ones and those who are also looking at the efficiency. So got quite a wide background in my understanding of how these systems are used within client accounts.
Excellent. And Dean, glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. So I'm Dean Palmer and I'm head of cloud services at Formpipe. So I'm the Azure guy and lead a team of even better Azure guys.
Very nice. Well, I want to get right into it. It's a big topic that we wanted to cover today, document visibility. And let's start with the challenges. From a perspective of a Microsoft Dynamics customer, whether they're managing their customer experience or whether they're managing operational elements, why don't we start with maybe just looking at some of the challenges that you see when you talk to companies in the Microsoft space about what they're facing. Mike, do you want to take a first stab at this?
Yeah, sure. I think we've been in this space now for around 10 years. So over that time, I feel like we've seen an awful lot of interesting output management requirements and built connectors into Dynamics and sort of solved a number of problems on that side. But I think recently what we've been finding more and more is that visibility across the organization, across the different systems as well. So as Dynamics has become the system that's brought together, the whole ERP side, the whole CRM side, and all the other elements of an organization. That visibility of those documents, wherever you might be, I think we're seeing more and more questions being asked because, if you like, at the moment, you can very easily see a document if you're in finance and operations. You can go and drill down into sales order confirmation, find a copy of that document and view it back. The same inside CRM. Many people will know you can go in CRM, it's integrated with SharePoint, and you can view a document from there. But what if we wanted to move more into a world where if I'm generating a quote inside the CE side of things, but I suddenly want to see that inside F&O? And I want to see the invoice alongside that, and I want to see the sales confirmation. That side of things, we've been questioned quite a few times, is that possible? And I think that for me, in the world where we live today, you should be able to see anything from any system. The front end is clearly Dynamics, and we've looked very hard at how we can solve those sort of problems, really. And I think if we take where we stand today, what we've got is, as an organization, the Formpipe setup is we're generating those documents, and the natural extension is to store them. So we've got a central archiving solution. It's called AutoForm DM. That's been used for over 30 years now in many different areas. And one of those big areas is banking. And I know we'll probably, we really need to touch on security and things like that in a little while. But, the secure document storage is an area that we come from. So we looked at how we could create this central store of all the documents. And no matter where you are in the organization, you can then visualize those. And indeed, it's not only just generating an invoice, but it could also be a scanning of a document in. It could be an external document coming into the organization. How do we get access to all of those?
Yeah, no, thanks for that sort of introduction. And what occurs to me just from listening to the way you frame that up is how many ways any organization can be starting to face this challenge, whether it's the different kinds of documents like you mentioned, or maybe the existing methods that they use to try to track these things, be they efficient or not efficient. Ben, I don't know, talking to customers, you must see this all the time, that companies are starting in different spots, right? When they're trying to get their arms around this.
Yeah, completely. And it's all about the ease of use for their end members of staff to be able to access the content within those systems. So what you don't want to have is a challenge when you introduce a software system where you've got to try and get people on board. It's got to be easy for them to use, but then equally not allow a backdoor into content that they don't have the permissions to view. So that ease of use, ease of search, ease of retrievability, whichever way you want to put it, that's at the forefront of most of our clients' minds when they're looking at doing something like this. If you then, add on to that the fact that they would have invested heavily in the core platform, so they would have invested heavily in Dynamics, for example, that platform is going to be key to everything that they do. So then if you are adding anything else into the mix, it's got to work seamlessly with that core platform. So when Mike touched on the term there that we use a lot of centralized archive, what we're talking about there is just one simple view of your world, whether you're searching by a client account, a partner number, a part number, a site supplier name, whatever it is that you want to search by, you're getting a true representation of that across your whole organization without there being a hard way, a cumbersome way for that person to actually go and find that information. And it's interesting because we're doing this internally as well. Okay, we Formpipe historically have grown through a number of acquisitions, and we bring a number of systems into one to make sure that we've got our staff one simple place where they can go and view and get a true view of either a client, an account, or a partner without having to go and knock on the door of some of their colleagues to ask for information that's held in those silos. So really what we're talking about here is document management, which isn't particularly onerous or hard to meet, but what is the challenge is being able to give that easy access to the content stored within that document management system.
Yeah, Dean, anything you would add there?
Yeah, I mean, I come into this, Mike mentioned earlier about banking, and that's really my background. I've worked at DM in the banking industry for 10 years, first delivering it, installing it, and later on moving into cloud hosting and how we go along that transformation, as so many companies are. So my angle is really security, compliance, scalability. Ben touched on something there that we want to enable customers to see. The challenges are letting people see what they're allowed to see, but not what they're not allowed to see. And that has to be easy. So that's something that's just, I can't speak highly of it really, highly enough. We have to tackle that, and we are. But security is a big thing that we'll probably touch on later.
The interesting thing here, Jason, is those people who've ever done a sales job will know that when you're talking to an end account, then you talk about the picture that you could move into. And for a client to achieve that, they do have to properly adopt these systems to work for them. But if you can start to look across your organization and say, well, we can bring in content there that we generate ourselves, we can bring in content that's generated outside the organization, we can bring in content from older systems that were maybe retiring out of use, that's when you get the true benefit of a system at the core of your business. So to not knock the sales guys, sometimes they are actually talking with a lot of thought for the client end's benefit. And if they can then truly see that project through, the client organization will benefit greatly from having that document management system at the core of business.
Yeah, I guess to add on to that, that's when we start moving into talking about open APIs and data integrations and all kinds of other things that are there in the modern world in any kind of core platform or system. So all those systems can talk to each other, ingest, share data across. So we're moving towards this world where you need that core document management system that can talk to everything.
Yeah, and the growth of portals and front end systems, whether it be, Dean, like we've done, for many years in banking, or now even in the Dynamics world, we're in the utilities industry working with a key partner there, and they've got a portal where essentially their customers need to be able to go on, not only see how much they're spending on their electric, but also be able to download the latest document that shows them how that breakdown is done. The interfacing into one of the buzzwords of portals these days seems to be such a key topic.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing from all three of you is, on the one hand, it has to be really simple, seamless, easy. And then on the other hand, you have to tackle these big challenges around managing huge quantities of documents, keeping them secure, keeping them compliant. Why don't we talk about that other side of it, because we bring it back to the end user or customer view. But I mean, what are some of those tough challenges that that go on behind the scenes. Dean, do you want to start on this?
So I guess the change that I've seen in the industry over the last 10 years or so is going from this world where you had the administrators and you had the users, and that was the only kind of user roles that you had. Whereas in the last few years, we've moved towards this much more fine-grained approach and role-based access control. And we've had to keep up with that. Products have had to keep up with that. So you've moved away from this world where you're either a have or a have not to where you have to have maybe 10 different sets of user permissions, and you set people up based on their job role or job description, and finance can see finance documents and legal can see legal documents, but all those documents are stored in the same system. So if somebody changes role or if somebody's at a management layer, they can see everything, but other staff can only see certain things. So that's really the big change that I've seen in terms of kind of compliance and data segregation.
I'll come in as the word compliance was mentioned there. That's trying to my background. The interesting thing for me, and you touched on it as you asked that question as well. So when I talk about ease of use, yes, it's ease of use for your end staff members, really. But yes, those of us who design the system along with clients and partners, you do need to take into account all the different compliance elements that are put on you by regulation, or then the ones that you choose to follow. So we do follow some internal rules for document storage and retention that we choose because the content that we're storing is important to us or valuable or may be of value in the future. So having a system that can manage various different rules around retention and then what happens at the end of that retention period is critical, because that's where too many times with historic systems, you get talking to clients and actually they're being held back by moving away from those because they don't have that flexibility. So it is a very important part. It's important also, I feel, let's step away from the software. You have to be honest with yourself when you're looking at your own content and say, who owns this? Who can make this decision? Who can actually decide what we need to view and what metadata needs to be wrapped around this set of content to be able to make those decisions as well. So there is a bit of a human management aspect to managing your content also.
But shouldn't we also just take one thing you said there, which is actually the metadata and the indexes, right? Over the years, one of the starting points of any project that people always find quite complex is, well, how do we index and what do we index in the document by, right? And if we're not indexing it in the right way, we will never find it. So if we get that right from the very, very start, that then makes it so that we can actually view it how we want. We can see it in any portal or any API or anything like that, or any system that we want. But also we can also look at retention of documents and making sure we're nobody likes to talk about the word removal in terms of archive, but we're removing the right documents at the right time, whenever it might be. So any project will always start with the security plus what do we store in each document by and what are those common indexes. And that's what in Dynamics is going to bring it so that we can say, well, there's always a customer number, there is always an account number, there is always a date, there is always something. Usually, I'd say, Dean, between 5 and 10 indexes on any one document, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always one of the most challenging things, I guess, when I used to do the delivery. You're getting people to sit down and think about that, and it's almost like news to them. We need to think about this. And it's like, yeah, it's your documents, it's your data. How do you want to interact with it? It's not up to us to dictate those rules. We've got a lot of experience and we can help guide you, but it's your data and it's your processes. So yeah, 5 to 10 is ideal, really. But you really have to think about it.
Sorry, that's such a valid point there that you make, because as we know, you can have anything, often we see 40 or 50 pieces of metadata associated to one document. But when we go back to the earlier point about the ease of use, if you're giving your end user maybe only 2 fields to search on, something like a date range and a customer number, it's so much easier for them to therefore go and view what they want to see rather than giving them 12 different fields to go and search upon. So yeah, start at the end was something I was told some years ago. So start at your endpoint of how you want to search and query your data, and then you'll work back from there.
What are some of the ways that you tackle that challenge with, like, for example, the right attributes, the right metadata, the right, rules for compliance? Do you start with pre-built, templates or pre-built approaches to helping people get started with that? Or does it tend to be really bespoke and based on every business's own sort of internal workings?
I'm going to take a little trip down memory lane for a minute in the fact that actually in the old days, we used to print the documents out, put them on a desk and walk along them and actually highlight an area that was the same across each document. That's how it used to be done, let's say. But nowadays, it more is a case of, yes, okay, there is an absolute, as I think it was Dean or Ben said, we've done this for so many years. We walk into an organization, it is a surprise to them that they have to think about it, but there is always a certain set of indexes that we would recommend a customer looks at across every single document, and you configure the system to that. Then on the end of that, there will always be, depending on the industry that we're in or the vertical that we're actually attacking, something else that they might be needing. And that's where it then maybe extends to the sort of 10 and maybe even sometimes a little bit beyond. But the absolute core of any project when you're doing this is making sure those first few indexes are correct across every single document, because that allows you then to be able to say, right, show me all the documents for customer A, and as long as it says in column A, customer A, you get them all back and you can then define that out. And I think from security thing, that then leads on into how you can securely view, but also, as I keep saying, remove documents and make sure that they're in the right place, right?
Yeah, definitely. And for me to go on a trip down memory lane now, one of the first things I learned was to not ask customers how they want to save their documents, ask them how they want to view their documents. And it's a different ball game. You know, if you say, how do you want to save it? I will just save everything. That adds complexity. It removes that ease of use. So you start with the business processes. How are your teams going to interact with these? How do they want to search them? How do they want to view them? And then you can build up your metadata from there.
Okay. And I'll add on to that as well. We've got great experience within our own team, but we've also got a great partner network where we pull upon their experience within the different verticals that they're in, where they'll be able to add that 5-10% of expertise to understand what's important within that particular industry. So, you know, we're very good at what we do, and then we have partner networks who enhance that also.
Yeah, that makes sense. Going back just a bit to what you were touching on there, though, and one of the things it makes me think of is the responsibilities that go with maybe an older way of managing documents inside an organization, and what your solution would propose or would how it would change it. So who's responsible for what, and how an organization manages that shift in responsibilities, in the way their processes might change. I don't know who to throw this one to, but do you see that firsthand?
I think one of the keys is, first of all, how we manage the system. So, our system and what we're offering here is an out-of-the-box solution that allows you to, as Dean's sort of talking about in the cloud, deploy very quickly, which is obviously a change from where we were a number of years ago, or any document management system was, where you had to install everything on site, configure it all, and get it all up and running. So the cloud has led it to a new market now where it is instantly available, and then we can start putting some documents inside. But the other point I'll say also is that something we haven't touched on yet is actually the user interface to go and fetch a document, not only if you're looking at it from another system, but also going straight into an actual document and logging in yourself. I mean, the system comes with its own interface to do that straight away out of the box, configured around these keys, the metadata that we've been talking about, etc. So a lot of it is about how simple the system's to get up and running from my point of view, and the speed that we can get that going.
I'll pitch in there, Jason. I've got a passion for looking at legacy systems as well within organizations, and hopefully people listening to this will allude to that as well. And if they don't, it's something that's coming soon within private sector businesses, where we have a number of legacy systems that we run that are costing us a lot of resources, whether that be staff or financial resources to manage and support. And by looking at them almost soberly and saying which ones do we need to retain, or where can we shift the content and the data into one common system, we can look at saving that cost, that resource, and putting it somewhere more exciting. So that system retirement part, it touches on digital preservation best practice, and it's something that I think we need to be looking at more with our clients and our partners, to help people move from those legacy systems, whether or not they even be as old as S400s, Lotus Notes, there's a whole host of them that are still kicking along in organizations, and help people move away. And therefore, you're ensuring the compliance of the content, but you're also able then to switch off those old, expensive, resource-heavy, costly systems.
Interesting. So, I mean, just to review, with today's solutions, where it's launching as a cloud-based solution, and I mean, notwithstanding the legacy systems, it sounds like speed is one of the big changes to older generations of deployments. Any other real changes to what a cloud-based deployment looks like today than maybe what something might have looked like just a few years ago?
To me, the big thing that I've really seen is the reduction in responsibilities and the speed and ease of deployment, right? So when I first started out, I was going on site, installing DM, setting it up, doing the databases, doing the indexing. It might take you a week to do that work, Now with the cloud, we click a button and our system's up and running for somebody and they can start ingesting things. So you've gone from this world where everything was on site, that you could touch the servers, you could pat them on the back as you left at the end of the day, you could take the backup disks home and all that stuff. But it was very, very hard to get your data out of that organization to your customers or to your partners or to other third parties in your network. Whereas now with the cloud and the open APIs and portals, like Mike mentioned, we're moving towards this world where it's more about open data and allowing customers to see their data that you hold about them, or view their orders, view their history, view their statements, whatever it might be. So it's speed, simplicity, and openness, I think, are the three big changes that I've seen over the last few years.
And I guess long-term as well, long-term storage. Ben, I mean, from where you come from, the change now is actually, okay, we do keep documents, but the retention periods are now very specific, but it also depends on what industry you're walking into. And it is easier now to obviously keep documents for a longer period of time if required, due to the amount of storage or small amounts of storage that are needed. And the fact that it's all in the cloud scales it very quick.
Yeah, for sure. Again, that goes back to a few things that we've mentioned already. Where we are having that regulation dictated to us, then obviously the cloud is supporting that perfectly. Also, it needs the organization to be true and say we can't save everything for 25 years because why would we? Why should we? So having that ability to step back and then apply those different retention policies is really, really important, because the key that you're looking at here is the speed and the security that we've discussed, but only for the content that you need to apply that to.
I feel like I've heard in other business cases that the perspective is really, I don't want to save these documents any longer than I absolutely have to. I want to jettison them as soon as I can. Do you see that as well? Or is it more the conservative, let's make sure we don't lose anything?
No, again, across the range of clients that we have, we go from a range of people who are very conservative and save a lot to those people who, as soon as the regulation ends, one day after, they want to know that they've deleted it and they want the deletion certificate to show that. So there is the full range. I do think that the big driver is where it's dictated to you. If it's dictated, people do tend to move more to allow that retention period to finish and then delete. Where you're saving it for your own internal use because you value that content yourself, that's where there tends to be a bit more of a grey area, more of a discussion what to do at the end of that retention period.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking about looking to the future. I mean, almost the meaning of documents has changed, I would say, over time, where as they become more digital, they're not the same as a paper document. What do you think about when you look to the future in this space and maybe the future of what your customers really are going to need?
That's funny. Something that I have in my mind quite a lot is that recently we've gone on this transformation in the industry from documents to data. A document is just data on a page. It's the data that's important. The document itself with the formatting or whatever is almost less important as we move towards this world where customers or partners interact with you via the web portal. So all the data is pulled in and it makes a dynamic document on the web page. It's not a fixed PDF anymore. I just see that continuing. And more people wanting to use stuff like open APIs and integrations, data pipelines, whatever you want to call it. I see data just going from strength to strength and us moving even further away from documents.
And I'd add it's not just limited to documents. So I use the word objects quite a bit, Jason. So we have a number of clients who now record audio or videos for when they're meeting their end clients to prove what's happened. So, we have to think about that and the considerations then for preserving those files in the correct format and with the correct metadata wrapped around them. So it is such a broader and a very interesting subject once you actually start looking into the scale that clients are bringing to us.
And I'd just finally tie that off with, I still think in the future there's going to be a need for that almost rubber stamp of something. Okay, whether it is a data or a file or an object or something like that, that rubber stamp for any kind of reason in whatever industry, whether it's a legal reason, whether it's a regulatory reason, whether it's something, that point in time of that stamp is still going to be there for quite some time yet, I believe.
I was just going to say, maybe that brings us on to stuff like e-signatures and whatever, allowing people to take a document or some data, wrap that up, send it off to a customer. The customer signs it via whatever platform that is, and then our system can save the signed copy. So you have that rubber stamp, you have the date, you have the whole audit log of who did what to that document at what time. And that gives you that essentially a replacement for a wet signature, and it's there forever as long as you need to keep it.
Yeah. Anything else related to the work that your team is doing or that you're doing with your clients around Autoform DM that you wanted to make sure we cover today? This has been a really great discussion. You can really see where the space is moving and where some of the capabilities and needs are moving.
I mean, I think we've covered an awful lot of topics, which is fantastic. I think the one of the final things I would say is it's all about that final integration back into Dynamics, right? It's ensuring that visibility is there, that people are using the Dynamics system that they know and love today to be able to do whatever they need to do. I think integration is the key aspect that we're looking at.
Well, I think we'll end it there then. I want to thank you all for taking the time to chat. It's a fun topic and something where things really do continue to change. So I appreciate you sort of updating me on what's going on and what your firm has been up to.
Appreciate it, Jason. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no worries, Jason. Thank you.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks once again to my guests, Mike, Ben, and Dean. For more information on Formpipe or AutoForm DM, please visit www.formpipe.com or contact them at sales@formpipe.com. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and on Twitter for all of our updates. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.